Hey there, I'm Louie, and in this video I'm going to be showing you how to make Chubzilla. This is the first collaboration pattern for Club Crochet. This pattern is actually created by a friend of mine named Geeky Hooker. Geeky Hooker crochets a bunch of amigurumi stuff and actually just came out with a book called Literary Yarns. You can find a link to it in the description. She basically crochets literary characters into amigurumi. There's the White Rabbit and Sherlock. You should check it out. It's really cool. I think there's Frankenstein as well. But anyhow, in this pattern, we're going to be making her creation, Chubzilla. He's so cute. He's just a chubby Godzilla. And yeah, the materials that you're going to need for this pattern are, we're using all worsted weight yarn. I'm using an olive green, a yellow, and a dark green, but you could obviously use any three colors. I would suggest making the spine in a darker color than the main color. So, for example, maybe pink and like a dark pink, and then maybe like a white for the stomach. That could be pretty cute. And the feet. We're also using a size... I'm using a size G crochet hook, but in the pattern she calls for a size E crochet hook. I'm using a size G because I'm a little bit more comfortable with the G size, and it makes my Chubzilla just a little bit bigger than it normally would. So if I use an E, it might be like that big, and it's easier to see on camera as well. So we're using a size G, but if you'd like to stick to the pattern, it's a size E. You'll also need a darning needle. I suggest a darning needle with a crimped end like this. It makes it a little bit easier to sew on parts like the spine and the arms and legs. What else? You'll need a pair of scissors, some stuffing, and some eyes. I'm using safety bead eyes. These are, I believe, like a size 12mm safety bead eye, but you could use anywhere between an 8mm to huge eyes like that big or something. Really any size you want. All right, well, let's get hooking. We're gonna start by making the arms and legs. All right, let's start with the arms. I'm gonna be using the olive green yarn for this, and I'm gonna do a magic loop method, but you could easily use the chain 2 method as well. In fact, we'll be doing this for a lot of the parts of this pattern. Into the magic loop or into the second chain from the hook, we're gonna single crochet 6 times. 1, 2, 3, and this is pretty standard for amigurumi, I think. 4, 5, and 6. Okay, let's tighten that up a little bit. There we go. And that's going to be the end of round 1 for the arms. For round 2, we're just going to be working in the round, meaning that we won't turn around for this entire pattern. And that's the case for literally the entire pattern, except for the spines. We do have to turn for that, but it's really easy. So we're going to be working around in a spiral. So we're going to start in this first crochet stitch right here. And in this next round, for round 2, we're going to be doing a single crochet into the first stitch, and then an increase into the next. Okay? And then we're going to repeat that 3 times total. So let's do it for our second repeat. Single crochet, and then increase. And this is going to bring you up from 6 stitches to 9 stitches. Single crochet, and then our increase. Okay, and that's going to be the end of round 2. For round 3, it's really simple. We're just going to be doing a single crochet into each stitch all the way around. Easy squeezy, lemon peasy. Now, as I continue on in this pattern, because this pattern is pretty long, there's going to be parts where I will just do rounds of just single crochets. And in those rounds, I will likely be fast forwarding. So you might have to pause in the video and like catch up to my single crocheting. This is just to speed up the video a little bit because it's not like 2 hours long. Okay, there's our single crochets in each stitch. There should be 9 stitches total. Okay, and then in this last stitch right here, you're going to slip stitch 1, and we can cut the yarn. You want a long enough end so that you can use it to sew onto the body, but you don't need it too long. Put that to the side, and just pull through. Okay, and you want to make 2 of these, and we'll put it to the side for sewing onto the body. Next up, let's make the legs. For the legs, we're going to start with our secondary color, which in this case is canary yellow. We're going to do the same method of doing a magic loop instead of the chain 2 method. But you, again, can use the chain 2. And just like the arms, we're going to start by single crocheting 6 times into the loop or into the second chain from the hook. 4, 5, and 6. Okay, let's tighten this loop up a little bit. Okay. For round 2, we're going to just be working an increase into each stitch all the way around. So just 2 single crochets in every stitch. There should be 6 increases total, which equates to 12 single crochets total. So there's 12 stitches total by the end of this round. And I'm just going to work around this tail for the first few stitches. And you're going to want to stop 1 stitch before the end because we're going to change colors to back to our green. And there's going to be actually a lot of color changes within this pattern, specifically on the belly. But I'll be helping you out along the way, and I'll show you how to do color changes right now. So this is our last stitch for round 2 of the arm. And now we can grab our foot, and we're going to place it between the loops on the stitch, or on the hook and the yarn attaching it. Place our new shade in between those, and I'm going to hold it down with my index finger of my dominant hand, the one with the hook, and with my non-dominant index finger I'm going to place it in between the two, and I'm just going to flip it under like that. That's going to lock it in. We can yarn over with this new yarn and just pull it through those 2 stitches, and that should actually hold it in place. So we can tighten it a little bit with this yellow one. That'll tighten the stitch and hold it in place. Okay, for round 3 and 4, we're just going to be working single crochets all the way around. So it's just going to be 12 single crochets. For the first single crochet here, I'm just going to work around this yellow, but that's it. Just for the first one, just to lock it in, and then we can cut it and put it to the side. Place that down. And for the rest of this round, it's just going to be single crochets in our olive green yarn here. I never really liked olives. So for these next 2 rounds, it's just going to be single crochets. So I'm going to go ahead and fast forward here, and I'll be back in just a second. Okay, so I'm at the last single crochet right here. And like the arms, we're going to slip stitch into the next stitch. Cut the yarn, leaving a long enough end for sewing on to the body. And you can just pull it all the way through. And again, like the arms, you're going to want to make 2 of these. So 2 arms and 2 legs. Who would have thunked it? Next up, you need the olive green yarn, and we're going to be making the tail. So for the tail, again, we're going to be using the magic loop. I actually suggest that you use the magic loop probably for the tail. I don't think it's a necessity, but it'll probably help you keep that hole closed a little bit better, because we're going to be doing the tail a little bit differently. So for the tail, you want to single crochet only 3 times into the magic loop or into the second chain from the hook. 1, 2, and 3. And then we're going to close it up, tighten that hole. There we go. Okay. For round 2 of the tail, we're going to be working only in the back loops of the 3 single crochets that we just made. And we're just going to single crochet 1 time into each loop. This can be a little bit tricky, so what I like to do is I loosen up my stitch like that, and then I can more easily move my crochet hook around, get into the back loop of the next stitch, pull a loop through, and then now I can tighten the loops. Don't tighten them too tightly though. And let's crochet around this tail just for 1 stitch here. Again, like I was saying, this tail can be a little confusing, so take it slow and take it calm. Now I'm going to loosen the stitch up so I can get into the next stitch again. Here's our second stitch, and remember you want to do a single crochet into each stitch all the way around. I can already get into that one. There we go. Tighten it once you get the loop through. And then one last one right there. Oopsies. There we go. Pull our final loop through. And there we go. Okay, that's going to be the end of round 2 for the tail, and you can see it's very tiny, very weird looking. So for round 3, we're going to be working an increase into each stitch all the way around. This is going to make it look a little bit more normal. So we're going to get into that first stitch. Again, I have to loosen my stitch up to get into that. There we go. Loop through. And we're going to make an increase into each one, meaning 2 single crochets into each stitch. And that's going to bring you up from 3 stitches to 6 stitches and make it a little bit more manageable. Okay, so here's 4. You got to take this slow or else you probably might go into the wrong stitch. And here's our 6th. Okay. It's going to be the end of round 3. For round 4, we're going to work a single crochet into the first stitch, and then an increase into the next. And you're going to repeat that 3 times total. So 1, 2, and 3. Let's do our second repeat. A single crochet, and then an increase. And that's going to bring you up from 6 stitches to 9 stitches. Single crochet and an increase. Okay. That's going to be the end of round 4. For round 5, we're going to be doing 2 single crochets. 1, 2, and then an increase. 3 and 4. Okay, and you're going to repeat that 3 times total. Let's do our second repeat. 1, 2, 2 single crochets, and then an increase. 3 and 4. And that's going to bring you up from 9 stitches to 12 stitches. And then our last increase right here. Okay, and now we're going to slip stitch into the next stitch right there. We can cut the yarn. Again, you want a long enough end to sew onto the body, and just pull it all the way through. There you go. And that's going to be the end of our tail. And for our last part that we're going to make before the body is we want to make the spine. So for the spine, it's going to be in this darker main color. So in this case, it's dark green. And you want kind of a long end for the beginning. And we'll make a slip knot. And for the spine, you want to chain 25. Chain 25. 2, 4, 5. Okay, and that's going to be 25. We're going to skip our first chain, which is right there. Skip that one and work into this second chain from the hook. And we're going to start by making a slip stitch into that second chain. And now we're going to start our somewhat of a repeat to make the loopy parts. You're going to chain 3, 1, 2, and 3. We're going to skip a stitch, so skip that stitch right here, and we're going to slip stitch into the next stitch right there. And you want to repeat that 9 times total. So there's our first one. So let's repeat it again. Chain 3, 2, 3, skip a stitch, and slip stitch. Okay, 9 times total. 1, 2, 3. Here's our third repeat. Skip a stitch, slip stitch. So I'll go ahead and get those made, and I'll be right back. Okay, and that's going to be the last of those chain 3 repeats. Now you want to do 2 of these with only 2 chains. So for 2 of these loopy things, we want to chain 2, 1, 2, skip a stitch, and slip stitch into the next, just 2 times. So there's 1, chain 2, skip a stitch, 2, and that's it. And for this last stitch, we want to just slip stitch 1. And we can cut the yarn. You want to leave a pretty long end for this because you're going to be sewing it all the way up the back. Cut it, and you can just pull all the way through. And that's going to be the end of the spine and the end of using this darker shade of yarn, so you can put that yarn away. Okay, let's put this to the side, and let's get working on the body. Thanks for watching. We'll get back to the pattern in just a sec. If you like this video, please take some time to like and subscribe down below. And if you want to make sure you don't miss the next pattern, click that little bell icon or join the Club Crochet newsletter in the description below. And if you really like this content a lot, consider becoming a Club Crochet member. Members get early access to future content as well as access to the ever-growing Club Crochet library, a library of exclusive patterns and tutorials. Members even get kits mailed directly to their door with all the materials I use in each video. Plans start at only $5 a month. You can learn more at clubcrochet.com. Alright, let's get back to the pattern. Okay, so for the body, you want to be working in this olive green yarn here. We're going to make another magic loop method. And get that through. And the body's going to start very similarly to how we did the arms. We're going to single crochet 6 times into the second chain from the hook or into the magic loop. This is going to be for round 1. Round 1. Loop. I never really played any fighting games. Well, except for Mortal Kombat, I guess. Let's see. So 6 single crochets. And we're going to tighten this loop up. Okay. There we go. And this is going to be worked in the round like we have been doing. For round 2, into each stitch all the way around, we're going to be working an increase, meaning 2 single crochets. And you should probably get this by now because we did pretty much the exact same thing with the foot, except in yellow. And you want there to be, there should be 12 stitches by the end of round 2. And I'm just working around this tail end just to hide it in a little bit. Okay, a few more stitches. Okay, that's going to be the end of round 2. For round 3, we're going to be working up to 18 stitches, which means you single crochet 1 into the first stitch, and then you increase into the next. And then you'll repeat that process 6 times total. That's going to bring you up from 12 stitches to 18 stitches. Which, you know, it's the amigurumi. That's, that's a general move for amigurumi. Okay. Last couple right here. And this is probably a time when I could say, you might want to use a stitch marker. I'm not using a stitch marker because I like to get lost and confused, and yeah, but it might be easier to use a stitch marker now. For our next round, round 4, we're going to be increasing up to 24 stitches, which means you single crochet into the first 2 stitches, 1, 2, 2 single crochets, and then an increase, 3 and 4, and then you're going to repeat that process 6 times total, which is going to bring you up to 24 stitches from 18 stitches. Do you remember there used to be a show, I think it was on Boomerang, with Godzilla's baby? It was like, I can't remember, it was like, God, can't remember what the name is. In fact, if you can think about what the name of Godzilla's kid is, let me know in the comments, because this guy totally reminds me of that. His name was like Gurk or something like that. I can't remember. But this character totally reminds me of Godzilla's baby. There's like a whole TV show about him. I remember there being like a boat maybe in the show. I don't know. Alright, so that's going to be the end of round 4. For round 5, we're going to be increasing yet again to 30 stitches around, which means you single crochet into the first 3 stitches. 1, 2, and 3. And then work an increase, 4 and 5. And then you'll repeat that process 6 times total. 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. You know, there's a pretty decent amount of math that goes into crocheting. Like right there, we're doing 5, and then you multiply it by 6, so then we got 30 stitches around by the end of this round. And there's a lot of that in crocheting. I mean, it's simple math, but there's definitely a lot of math that goes into it. It's interesting because you can think about crocheting either visually, or you can think about it mathematically. You can probably figure out a pattern just by doing the math of where increases and decreases should go to create a sculpted character. It's like sculpting with yarn. It's going to be our last stitch right here. Okay. For our next 2 rounds, round 6 and 7, we're just going to be working a single crochet into each stitch all the way around. There should be 30 stitches into each round that you work into, so make sure to keep count. I'll be back in just a second once I finish up these 2 rounds of single crochets, and yeah, be right back. Okay, so we're at the end of round 7 there. From round 8, we're going to be starting to do our increases to make his little snout. Let me show you on the finished project here. So he kind of goes out for a little snout, out for the snout. Okay, so to make that, we're going to single crochet 13 times for the start of round 8. 1, 2, 3, and the best way that I found to do this without even counting is you just look at where the increases are for the round before. So there's an increase right there, which means I've done 5 single crochets. So this way I don't need to count. And when I get to our second increase, there it is. You can see a second increase is right there, working right above it, which means I'm 10 stitches in. We count our 3 stitches. 1, 2, 3. Now we're going to work an increase in the next stitch. Okay. Get more yarn. Then we're going to work 2 single crochets. 1, 2, and then another increase. 3 and 4, and then 13 single crochets to get back to the end of this round. And that's all you got to do for the first round of snouts. And you're going to kind of start to see a pattern here for the snouts that makes it increase. Okay, and that's going to be the end of round 8. For round 9, we're going to do a very similar thing. We're going to single crochet 13 This one's even easier to do without counting your stitches. All you have to do is keep single crocheting until you get to the increase from the previous round. So we can just keep single crocheting, and yeah. Okay, coming up on 13 now. And here's our 13th stitch. Then we'll work an increase into the next stitch. Okay, and then we'll work 4 single crochets. We increase the single crochets by 2. 1, 2, 3, 4, and then another increase. And now we'll do our last 13 single crochets to get to the end of that round. And I forgot to mention the stitch count. For our last round, you should have 32 stitches around. That's round 8. For round 8, you should have 32 stitches. For round 9 here, the one that we're just finishing up right now, you should have 34 stitches around. Okay. And here's our last one. Okay, for round 10, pretty similar thing. I think you might get the pattern now. You want to single crochet 13 times. Get to that same increase. You know, when you got your arms out like this, crocheting in front of a camera, I gotta tell you, and you keep doing regular single crochets, it gets really... It's like I'm holding a puppet or something. My arms are getting so tired. Okay, there's our 13th single crochet. Now we'll make an increase. And now we'll single crochet 6 times. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6. And then work another increase. And then we'll finish up by single crocheting 13 times to get to the end of this round. Round 10. Pretty simple like a pimple. You know, those just rhyme. I don't think pimples are really that simple. They're actually pretty complex. Like, there's a bunch of different ones, and yeah, there's a lot going on in a pimple. So pimples are not simple. All right, so that's going to be the end of round 10. For rounds 11 and 12, that's 2 rounds. I'm going to get that tail in there. For 2 rounds, you just want to make a single crochet into each stitch all the way around. So you know what's going to happen here. I'm going to start this single crochet round, and I'll be back after I finish our 2 rounds of single crochets. Be right back. Okay, and that's going to be the end of round 12. For round 13, you're going to single crochet 13 times. Now we're going to start decreasing down for the snout to really show off that sweet, sweet snout. Do you remember that Godzilla movie from like the early 2000s that everybody hated? Just reminding you. I remember it being I remember there being a really scary scene. It was like set in New York or something. Let me just make sure where we're at. 1, 2, and here's our 13th single crochet. Now you want to invisible decrease 2 times. So an invisible decrease, you can decrease any way that you want. A lot of people do the single crochet 2 together. I personally like the invisible decrease the most because it's the least noticeable. For an invisible decrease, what you do is you take your crochet hook, you insert it into the front loops of the next 2 stitches, like that, okay? And then you just work a single crochet into those 2 front loops. Boom. And that's an invisible decrease. It's very not noticeable when you finish up the pattern. So you want to do 2 of those. So there's 1, and if I can get it in that second one, 2. And now you'll single crochet 2, 1, 2, and then do 2 more invisible decreases. 1 and 2. And now you can finish up this round by single crocheting into the next 13 stitches. 1. But yeah, remember that Godzilla movie? Did anybody see that the new Godzilla movie, the one with what's his name from Breaking Bad? That's a pretty okay movie, actually. I really enjoyed that. I heard they're making it into like kind of their own cinematic universe with King Kong and stuff, which could be pretty neat, actually. All right, so that's going to be the end of round 13. For round 14, we're going to do a very similar thing. We're going to single crochet 13 times. Let's get a little bit more yarn here. Oh, I meant to say that last round is going to bring you down to 32 stitches around. We were at 36 in round 13. At the end of round 13, you should be at 32 stitches. Now we're on round 14, and our goal here is to get down to 30 stitches. How we're going to do that is we're going to single crochet 13, which we are just about done with. And there's our 13th. And now we're going to do an invisible decrease. There we go. And then 2 single crochets. 1, 2. Another invisible decrease. And then 13 single crochets. Okay. All right, and that's going to be the end of our decreasing rounds. That was round 14. Let's see, where's the end here? That's our last stitch. Okay. For round 15, we're going to be increasing back up to 36 stitches around. To do that, we're going to single crochet 4 stitches. 1, 2, 3, 4, and then we're going to work an increase. 5 and 6. And you're going to repeat that 6 times total. So let's do it again. This is our second repeat. 4 single crochets. 1, 2, 3, 4, and then an increase. All right. 6 repeats total is going to bring you up from 30 stitches to 36 stitches. 3, 4, then an increase. Let's make sure I did that. Yeah. Sometimes you got to make sure that it was right. 3, 4, and then an increase. And this is going to be the final round, I would say, for our head. After this round, we're going to make our face, and then we are going to start doing our color changes for the belly. And the color changes on the belly are very precise. I made them really, really precise so that they can make a perfectly round belly for this pattern. Let's see. An increase. One, 2, 3, 4. It was really fun to collaborate with another crocheter, though. This is like the first one for Club Crochet, and I'm excited to do more of these in the future. Okay, and that's going to be the end of round 15. Now let's go ahead and add in the eyes. So let's grab our safety bead eyes. This is what they look like. Let's grab another one and toss out this extra thread there. Now I'm going to show you on our finished project where I put the eyes. It'll help you understand where we put the eyes on our unfinished one. I like to turn it upside down for this. So if you look for our increases from the last, from where you make the snout, you can see the increases right there. There's one increase, and the other increase is right there where the eye is. What I like to do is I like to put the first eye right in the middle of that, the second increase from, what is that, round, I guess that's round 9, I think. So we find that increase. You can tell I'm using a slightly different shade of yarn this time. Right here, and we're going to place it right in that increase. Right like that. Okay? And I'm going to lock it in with our locking mechanism here. And you can put it anywhere. You can put it like all the way on the side of the head. You could put it higher up. Different locations is going to give you a different like look for your Godzilla-y character. Our second eye is going to be 2 stitches away from this other increase. So if you go from this increase, you count over 2. Wait, where is it? Right there? Oh, I'm sorry. It's in this increase. So here's our first increase, our round 9 increase. It's actually in the round 10 increase, counted over 2 times. So right there, 1, 2. It's going to be right here. Oh, I'm sorry, 3. It's actually, there's 2 stitches in between. So let's count exactly how many stitches that is away from the previous one, just so we can make sure it's in the right spot. From the previous eye, it's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 stitches away, and then 1 stitch up. That's where I like to place the eyes. Again, you can place them wherever you want, wherever you feel is the most, it's just the best for it. That's just where I've been placing it, so that's where I'm going to continue placing it. We're going to place it to the side right now. Now is the time where you could add the nostrils. My problem is that my yarn is actually tied up right now, so I'm going to add the nostrils when I'm making the belly, because we have to cut this yarn anyhow, which will give me an opportunity to cut a little bit extra of this yarn and add the nostrils. It'll also be easier to gauge where we want the nostrils exactly. So for now, let's get back to the body and we can start crocheting with our color changes to make the belly. Okay, so now we are on round 16. For round 16, this is our first round of color changes, and there's a lot to tell you before we get going here. First off is, when you look at the pattern, there's going to be color changes at the end of the round. There's going to be these little brackets showing what color changes you do in the round itself. Now in the round, you can see in the beginning of the round, it tells you exactly what we're doing in this round. So in this round, we're doing 5 single crochets and then an increase. We're increasing back up to, or not back up, but we're increasing up to 40 stitches. Basically, all you have to do is make sure you put an increase where your last increase is. So here's your last increase. You're going to be putting an increase right there. But you're going to be doing color changes throughout. So you can see in this round, it says to do 17 in this olive green yarn, then 8 in our canary yellow yarn, and then 17 again in this olive green yarn. So we're going to start by doing our normal pattern. It's 5 single crochets and then an increase. So let's do that. Single crochet 5, 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. And then we're going to work our increase, 6 and 7. We're going to repeat that 6 times total throughout the pattern, so let's do it again. 5 single crochets, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and then here's 6 and 7, and that's going to be 14 stitches. So let's get up to 17. because that's when we're going to do our color change. 15, 16, and here's our 17th. We're going to pull it halfway through, not finish it, because we want to do a color change, remember. Then we're going to grab our yellow, or whatever you want to use for your secondary color. Place it in between the yarn, and then change over to yellow. Now we want to do 8 in this yellow color, but we still need to continue on in the regular pattern. So we did 3 single crochets, 1, 2, 3. Here is 4. I like to single crochet around our olive green just for 1 stitch there. Then we can cut the yarn. And now is a good chance to cut just an extra strand of this yarn. So let's go ahead and do that real quick. This we can use for the nose. You could also use like a black embroidery thread for the nose as well. Okay, so we did 1 single crochet in this yellow. Here's 2 single crochets in this yellow. And then we need to do an increase. I know that because that's our previous increase right here. So, and if you count over from our last increase, it's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and then an increase. That's going to be 6 and 7. And 4 stitches in yellow. 1, 2, 3, 4. And we want 8 total. 5, 6, 7. Here's our 8th. We can grab our green yarn here. Switch back over to green yarn. Our next stitch is a single crochet. I work around this yellow just to lock it into place so we can cut it away. Come back to it in the next round. And then work our increase. And I know that because that was 5 single crochets, and there's our next increase. And finish up this, I think we have 2 or 3 more increases left. Looks like 2 more increases. So do 5 single crochets, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and then an increase. And then one more time. 5 single crochets, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and then an increase. Okay, and that's going to be the end. Let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Yep, that's going to be the end of round 16 and our first round for our color changes to this belly. Now I'm just going to take a quick second and sew on the nose. Let's grab our olive green yarn that we cut and our needle right here. And I'm just going to make these little nostrils. You don't really need nostrils, but I think they're kind of fun. I like to put them a few stitches apart. So come out of somewhere on the nose. And I'm going to go over, I like going over 2 stitches, 1, 2, and then down 1. And I like to repeat it twice. So then I come out of where I went out originally. There's 1, and then go down. And there's 2, like that. It just gives you like the subtle imprint of a nostril. And then I can double knot these 2 on the inside. Okay. And we can cut that, cut this end. And let's do our second nostril. We want the second nostril just a few stitches away, so let's just go over, let's go like right here. And we're going to work the other way around. 1, 2, and then down 1. Looks like right there actually might be the better spot. Or there. Let's do here. Yeah, that looks good. And you want to double it up again. Okay, and then on the inside, this messy inside, I want to grab these 2 and double knot them. And we'll just cut the ends loose. Throw this to the side. We can probably stuff it with that little extra thread if you want. And there we go, we got a couple nostrils. This one got pulled a little close to the body. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna go in with my needle and just kind of fix it up a little bit. There we go. Okay, so let's continue on our body. So for the rest of, for the next, let's see. For the next 1, 2, 3, I think 4 rounds, it's just single crochets in every stitch all the way across. The only difference is the color changes in each round. So let's do round 17 now. For round 17, like I said, it's just single crochets, and you're going to do 17 in this olive green yarn, which means that we're going straight up to the color change, so you don't really need to count. All you have to do is just keep crocheting till you get to where you changed colors last time, because you made 17 in this olive green yarn for the last round as well. So no need to count. Oops. There we go. Just a few more. Make sure to get your yellow yarn prepared. And we're going to stop 1 stitch early, you know, just like halfway through our last stitch so we can do our color change. Right there. There is our 17 in olive green. Now we want to do 9 in this yellow. 1 more than you made last time. So we're going to place it in between, change over to our new color, and then we're going to single crochet just around this olive green just for 1 stitch to cut it loose. We're just going to place it down to the side, and we're going to make 9 in this new in this yellow here. So that's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, and here's going to be our 9th. We're going to grab our olive green yarn. Oop, if I can get it out, there we go. Place it in between and change back to olive green. Pull it somewhat tight, and then just single crochet around this canary yellow. And we can cut it loose. Okay. We can finish up this round. It's just going to be single crochets until you get to the end of the round, all in this olive green. I believe there are 16. Yep, 16 in this olive green yarn. Just to get to the end of this round. This is round 17. And the next 3 rounds are actually going to be pretty easy because they're all the exact same. All right, that's going to be the end of round 17. For round 18, 19, and 20, that's 3 rounds total. You want to do the exact same stitches, the exact same color changes. And there's just going to be single crochets into each stitch all the way around, so that's pretty easy. You don't really need to count too much. And the color changes are 17 in this olive green yarn, meaning that you're going to do the exact same amount as your last round, so you don't really need to count. You just need to get to where you did a color change last. 17 in olive green. Just a few more. Okay, there's 17. Now we grab our canary yellow, place it in between, change over. Now you want 10 in this canary yellow, meaning 1 more than the last round. So we can crochet around this olive green yarn just to lock it in. And you want to make 10. You can count this, so you can count like 10 yellow stitches, or you could just do 1 more than you did last time. So we can just keep going. Do 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 do. Okay, that's 9. Okay, let's do one more, 10. Change back to our olive green yarn here. There we go. And we're going to single crochet in just the next one just to lock in that yellow yarn and cut it loose. And now you can finish up by just doing single crochets with this olive green yarn to the end of the round. That's going to be 15 in olive green just to get to the end of the round. And currently we're on round 18, and you want to do 2 more rounds of this. So that's 3 rounds total, again, just of this exact same color change pattern. 10 in the yellow and when you come to the belly. So I'm going to go ahead and do those next 2 rounds off camera, and I'll be back in just a bit. I'll see you in a sec. Okay, so I am just about to finish. There's our last stitch right there. And that's going to be the end of round 20. For round 21, we're going to be doing a little bit of different stuff here. We're going to be actually decreasing down from 42 stitches down to 36 stitches. To do that, we're going to single crochet 5 times and then invisible decrease once and repeat that 6 times total. But we're still doing our color changes, so it's going to get a little wiggly woggly confusing. We're going to want to do 16 in our green yarn and then 7 in our yellow, 13 in our green again. And I'm just telling you what we're going to do because it's easier to talk about it first and then actually do it, because these next few rounds are a little bit confusing. I would say they're probably the most difficult for the pattern. So let's start by doing our 5 single crochets and then an invisible decrease. 1, 2, 3, and I'm actually going to keep count the whole time here. 4, 5, and then invisible decrease is going to be 6, which means that we're doing invisible decreases on every 6th stitch. So that means on our 12th stitch, it's going to be invisible decrease, and you're going to continue that process all the way around. I'm saying that so it's easier to remember when to do the invisible decreases. So we did 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, and here's 12, a division of 6, so 12, 13, 14, 15, and 16 in our olive green. Now we can change to our yellow. There's 16. Okay, now we'll change to the yellow just for 7 stitches. 17. We can cut the green yarn. 18 is going to be a decreasing round because it's a division of 6. So we can do a decrease. There's 18, 19, 20, 21, 22, and remember we only want 7 in this yellow, so we've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Here is our 7th. We grab our olive green yarn, place it back, boom, change to olive green. And remember we're on, let's see, if we were on 18, 19, 20, 21, 22, 23. So our 24th stitch is going to be an invisible decrease. So we're going to go into the front loops of this yellow one and this green one. Pull it through. Before I finish, I want to grab our yellow canary yarn, place it in between the two right there, and then pull through. Okay. That's going to be 24. 25. You could cut this canary yarn. And we can just continue this, our decreases till we get to the end of this round now. It's all in olive green. 30, 31. Wait. That was 21, 22, 23, 20, wait. 18, 19, 20, 21, 22, 23, 24, 25, 26, 27, 28. Okay, so we're on 28. 29. Now it's 30, which is a decreasing round. And we're decreasing down to 36, so we're almost done. 31, 32, 33, 34, 35, and then our last one right here is an invisible decrease. That's going to be 36. And that's the end of round 21. Okay. So for round 22, again, we're going to be doing a decreasing round. This time we want 4 single crochets and then 1 decrease. So we're decreasing every 5th stitch. And the color change pattern is 14 in olive green, 6 in yellow, and then 10 in olive green. Okay, so let's do that. 4 single crochets, 1, 2, 3, 4, an invisible decrease on our 5th stitch. 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, and then an invisible decrease on 10. Get that little strand of white yarn out of there. It's 10. 11, 12, 13, this is going to be 14. 14 is how many of our green we want. We'll change to our yellow. Next stitch is 15, which is an invisible decreasing stitch. So we go into the front loops of the next 2. 1, 2, pull that through. We're going to grab our olive green yarn and place it in between the stitches just to lock it in. Okay, so that's 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, and our last decrease, or our last yellow one right here is an invisible decrease. There's 20. Grab our green. I didn't even cut it. I just, because it's only a few stitches away, I'm just going to place my index finger in between the yarn and give it a little space. That way I don't have to cut it. Change back over to the green. Single crochet around that. That's going to be 21. Cut it. Okay. Pull that yellow away. And then just finish up 22, 23, 24, and then a decrease. 25, 26, 27, 28, 29, and our last decrease right here is going to be 30. Pull that out just a little bit. And that's going to be the end of round 22. And actually that was our last of our yellow color changes. So you don't have to worry about our yellow yarn anymore. You can put it away. We're done with it, which is a great feeling. Doesn't that feel great when you're done with one of the yarns? Feels nice. Okay. For our next round, round 23, it's going to be all in this olive green yarn. Ah, how nice. And we're going to single crochet 3 times. 1, 2, 3, and then do our invisible decrease. Boom. Okay, and repeat that 6 times total. 1, 2, 3. This is going to be our 8th stitch. This time we're decreasing on our 4 divisions of 4. There's 8, and we're just going to keep that count. 9, 10, 11, Boom. 1, 2, 3. Decrease. Always happy to be done with a little bit of a color change there. One, 2, 3. Invisible decrease. That's my little rhyme for invisible decreases. 1, 2, 3. Invisible decrease. All right, that's going to be the end of round 23. Now we want to sew on all of our pieces before we stuff him, and then we can finish sewing him up and blah, blah, blah. Let's start by sewing on our arms. I'm going to show you how to sew on these arms pretty simply. Like, I'm not going to go into a lot of detail is what I mean, because it's kind of hard to have an exact science of how to sew pieces together. I know what I do want to start with, though, is we have these two ends here. This is from the center of our arm, and this is from the outside, the end tail. We want to start by threading the center. And this is how we're going to sew together every piece. We're going to sew on by connecting the center, choosing where we want it on our body. So we're going to start right here. Okay? We want it to be like right next to the belly. And you want to place the end right where you think the center is going to be. So it looks like it's right like there. Okay? Boom. And you want to hold it down with your non-dominant hand. Hold it with all these other ends so it doesn't get lost on the inside. There's our end that we're going to use it to tie it together at the end. And now we can thread our other end. And there are 9 stitches around here. There's 9 stitches. So what I like to do is I like to first find where I want it to go. So like right there. Hold it in place. Choose the stitch where this lines up, like right there. Go out through the next one right here. And what I kind of like to do is I like to figure out where my stitches are going to go before I continue going around. So there's 9 stitches that I need to work in, which means there's 9 stitches around this thread that I need to work around. So let's count. There's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. There's 7. We're going to go up 8. And then 9. I think that'll work. Yeah, I think that'll work. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to start sewing it on by going stitch by stitch. And I'll probably have to count it again and again just to make sure. And before you have it all sewn together, don't forget you're going to have to stuff it. And we're just kind of holding it in place, keeping it where we know we want it to be, and finding stitches that are closest in proximity to the stitches they're lined up to. Proximity. What a word. I love that word, proximity. Makes me feel like I'm on Star Trek. Okay. So I've done a few stitches here. You can see the hole's getting pretty tiny there, so let's count how many more we need. We need 1, 2, 3, 4. 4 stitches. We count from where we went in originally. That's 1, 2, let's say 3, and then 4 is where we're coming at right now. So 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay? And that's how I sew things on a lot. I'm going to come out this one. And before we continue sewing it together, we need to grab our pencil and just a little bit of our stuffing. You don't need very much stuffing for the arms, just like that might even be too much. So let's do like half of that. You're gonna place it where that hole is. Take our pencil. I like to do it pointy end because it's easier to find where it needs to go stuffed in. just for like a little bit. Okay, there we go. It's stuffed in. And then we continue sewing it together. We have 2 more stitches. There's our first one. Here's our second one. And then the last one, we want to go right there. We'll go into the body. Come out the bottom. And you want to find the end that you came through with from the middle. There we go. And you can just double knot these 2 ends on the inside. So that's how I sew together all the pieces. I'm going to do that exact same process to sew on the other 2 arms. Or I mean the other arm, other 2 arms. He's got 3 arms, no. Our other arm and our 2 legs and our tail. And I'm just going to show you on the finished project exactly where I'm sewing them on, and then you can just do it yourself after that. So here is our finished project, and we got our 2 arms on either side of the belly. The feet are just a little bit lower on the side of the belly, so he can stand up on his butt. And then the tail is, of course, it's exactly a third. So if you look at from the bottom, we have the tail and the 2 legs are exactly like a triangle distance apart. So that's what I'm gonna go ahead and do off camera, and I'll be back in just a second. I'll sew all those pieces on, and then I'll show you how to sew on this this spine. That'll be last, actually, after we stuff it together. Yeah, you can do it like in the middle of the pattern, but I think it's a little bit easier actually to do it after it's already stuffed. Yeah, so let me go ahead and sew on these arms and legs, and I'll be back in just a second. Okay, so I have sewn together the arms and legs and the tail. Now we can go ahead and we can either stuff it a little bit, or we can finish one more round first. Let's stuff it a little bit before we do another round. It might make it a little easier later on. So important thing to know when you're stuffing it, especially when you're stuffing the head, is that you want to make sure to stuff the snout separately. Like just make sure to just stuff the snout, because if you miss out on stuffing the snout, hey, that rhymes. If you miss out on stuff in the snout, it'll become like a little deflated and weird. So just make sure to get in there, get in that snout. And I just kind of want to get the head pretty much stuffed. Let's add maybe just a little bit more. Yeah, that's probably good. Okay. And now that his head is stuffed up a little bit, we can continue crocheting. Let us work. Okay. Let's decrease again. This time we will be single crocheting 2. 1, whoops, and 2, and then be doing an invisible decrease. And there we go. And you're going to repeat that 6 times total. That's going to bring you down to 18 stitches, which is a nice small amount of stitches. You're getting to just the end of this pattern here. The end is always a little bit awkward to crochet around, but luckily it's on the bottom of him, so any awkward parts can be hidden because he'll be sitting down. Okay, 1 and 2. Yeah, and I know you might notice that we don't have the spine on. Like I said before, I find it a little bit easier to sew the spine on after it's completely stuffed. And the reason is it keeps its shape, so you can understand like how the spines are going to be sewn on better. Just kind of like, I don't know. I find it just made a little easier. You can sew it on earlier though as well. Okay, so that's going to be the end of that round. Let's stuff it just a little bit more. You want to continue stuffing as you decrease down. A little bit more stuffing every time. You want to make sure you fill up his belly and his butt. There we go. We'll add a little bit more in just a sec. Now let's do our next decreasing round, second to last round total. This round you're going to do a single crochet, and then I'm going to do something I call the sharp decrease. You can continue to do the invisible decrease or the single crochet two together, but I'm going to do the sharp decrease to really pull it in tight. To do that, you're going to go into the next stitch and pull a loop through, and then into the next stitch and pull another loop through like you'd be doing a single crochet two together. But with this second loop, you want to pull it through the two on the hook, and that's going to decrease it very sharply and pull it in. That it's kind of like a slip stitch two together, so let's do it again. You want to repeat that 6 times total. So it's a single crochet, and then a decrease, 1 and 2, and pull that second one all the way through. And that's going to bring you down to 12 stitches around second to last stitch, or second to last round rather. This stitch is very noticeable, so I only use it on the bottom to make a very flat end so that they sit up a little bit straighter. Whereas with the single crochet two together and an invisible decrease, it doesn't decrease as sharply, and you might get kind of a bump on the bottom. But again, it's a very noticeable stitch, so you got to be careful when you use it. Okay, get that in there just a little bit. Okay. And let's stuff it just a little bit more. This pattern takes up a lot of stuffing. I mean, not a lot, but just, I'm normally making things very tiny, so the amount of stuffing that I use is usually a lot less. This guy's like a full-on stuffed doll. Okay. There we go. That's pretty good. And we'll add just a little bit more at the end after this last round of decreases. So for our final round here, it's just going to be a decrease into each stitch all the way around. There should be 6 decreases total, which means that you'll have 6 stitches by the end of this round. The perfect amount for sewing a Chubzilla together. At this part, it's kind of hard to get your finger in the hole there, so what you got to kind of do is it's a lot in the wrist. It's a lot of wrist action. And honestly, it can kind of hurt a little bit if you're pulling a little too tight. So be careful not to screw up your wrist. This is the main part of crocheting that I have really hurt my wrist and had to stop crocheting a few times, is because I was just trying too hard to decrease, you know? And, oh, there you can hear my wrist cracking there. There we go. There should be 6 stitches. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Yep. And we can cut it. You don't need too much of an end. You just need enough to sew it together. And you could just pull it all the way through. And let's stuff firmly. So just a little bit more stuffing at the bottom. This is where I like to use a pencil. And I like to use the eraser side to help stuff it in. Makes it a little bit easier. I think we could do just a little tiny bit more. There we go. And I think that'll do. That'll do well. Let's test him. See how. Yeah, he's got like a little squish to him, but it's not too bad. I like it. All right. You don't want to stuff it too firmly because you'll see the stuffing through the stitches. And to finish this up, we're going to grab our needle and we're going to sew him together on the bottom. How I sew together is I count 3 stitches over. So this is, I call the 0 stitch. It's that's what we last worked into. You want to count over from right here, 3 stitches up. 1, 2, 3. You're going to go into the top of that and then out through our 0 stitch. Pull it through, but don't pull it too tight. Then you want to go through the next stitch over and then out through across it. You're basically making like a star or an asterisk. And once you're in that second one, you can pull this one a little tighter. Go through. That's where you went out. You want to go one stitch over and then across again. Pull it up and pull it tight. And then to finish it up, go one stitch over from that one. You pull it tight. You want to come out pretty much anywhere on the body. And then go down back through the bottom. And that'll kind of knot it up. It shouldn't come loose now. And you can cut it pretty close, like that. And that's going to be the end of stuffing it. And this is a pretty cute dinosaur if you ask me, but, you know, make him a little bit cuter. Let's sew on this spines. So the spines are sewn on from tail to forehead, like so. That's why you did those rounds, those parts in the spine that were just like 2 single crochets, was because it fits better when it's on the tail like this. So here's how I do it. First, you want to thread the beginning tail knot right there. So you can see on it, there's going to be 2 ends here. We're going to first thread the bottom part. And we're going to place that right where we want it. And we're going to go into the body. And we're going to come out somewhere on the side of the body, like right there. This is why I like having a curved needle. It makes things a little bit easier. Okay. And then we're going to thread the other end. And we're going to put the end right at the back of the tail, right there. And we're going to come out just a few stitches above, like right there. Okay, now how we sew this tail on, you can do 2 different ways, and I'll show you what each way looks like. The first way is to sew into these holes, which leaves these holes open, and it kind of looks cute. It's very like crafty looking. Here, I'll show you. This is the first way that I was just explaining, where you sew around the bottom chain and leave these holes open. The other way is to sew around the outside of it, and it makes more of a bumpy look like so. So if you want it this way, let me show you. The first way we're doing is we're going into the hole right here, into each of these loops. Okay? That's how I'm going to do it in the video. But the second way to do it is you go around the top of it like that. And then sew it down, and that'll pull it really tight in and make it look like those little bumps. So let's do it the first way. I'm going to go into the middle of the loop and back into the stitch that we just came out of, and then up a few stitches above, like right there. The trick is, let me pull that tight real quick. The trick is you want to make sure this spine is straight. So you want to consistently be putting it exactly where you want it to go, so that it ends up straight on the head like that. Okay? So you want to keep coming out of the piece exactly so that it's exactly straight. It's a little tricky. It's a little tricky. I sewed the first one on a little sideways and I had to redo it. Okay, but you just want to go up a few, oops, I'm sorry, I was off camera. Just up a few stitches. Pull it tight. We'll go into the next loop. And then back into the same stitch that you came out of, which is right there. Make sure it's straight up the back. Okay, and this is a good way to find out where you want to go through the next stitch. Place it on the back. It looks like right here is the next one. I'm actually going to go straight through it like that. A little easier. Skip a step. Okay. Then down. Make the body look right. Make it like go straight up the back. See where the next one's going to come out. Looks like right there. Yeah, right there is the next one. Sewing a spine together is a little tricky. It's very time consuming. You got to be very careful. Go up a few stitches. That looks straight up. Into the hole. All right. And you might be thinking, how are you going to tie these two together? Well, I'll show you. I'll show you, I promise. Gotta make sure it's straight while we're sewing it on. Once it's sewn on, it's kind of hard to fix. Okay. There we go. And you can kind of see I'm going like that way and then that way, then that way, then that way. That is kind of to make sure that it like waves a little bit. Because if I just did it on one side, it would bend over to the other side. So it's kind of a little technique to go one side then the other side to make it a little wavy. Okay, just a few more. Okay, and this is going to be the last one. Let's make sure we know where we want it. So we want the, yeah, okay, that'll be good. Just go right here, through, and then for the last part, you want to go into that final slip stitch right here. And then back into the same stitch, and you want to come out through wherever you came out with that first loop, like that. Pull it pretty tight. Fix up the spine a little bit. And then you can double knot these two. Cut the end really close and use the back of your needle. Whoopsies. You can use the back of your needle to just stuff that little knot back into the body, and that spine shouldn't come undone. All right, and that's going to be how to crochet Chubzilla. Make sure he looks all right. Tweak him up a little bit. There we go. That's Chubzilla. Thank you so much for watching. If you like this video, please let me know by liking and subscribing down below. And if you click that little bell icon, you'll be notified when I post my next patterns, which I believe are going to be for, for these little bumblebees. And I think I have some flowers. Yep, right here. These are, I think, the next patterns that I'm coming out with, but I come out with new patterns very often, so make sure to hit that little bell icon so that you're notified when I post new ones. You can also join the Club Crochet newsletter to get email notifications when I post new patterns. There should be a link in the description below. Thank you again so much for watching. Pasta La Pizza. Thanks again to Geeky Hooker. Check out her stuff in the description. And yeah, Pasta La Pizza and happy hooking. Meow.